Good evening, everyone.
Sister Miney, you're
Good evening.
muted. You're muted. You were going
Good
for a second.
evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I turned the microphone off instead of turning it on. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. If you are viewing us tonight via Facebook, come on in and tag some people and share so that more folks can watch this. Welcome to all of our YouTube audience. Welcome to all of our panelists and attendees who are with us via Zoom. So glad to have you with us tonight. This is a production of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, where Dr. Jerry Young is our president. And tonight we are having the fourth Turn Obesity Around presentation. This one is focused geographically on churches, communities, and individuals who are in the southwest region of our convention's footprint. And I am Lottie Minor. So glad again that you all are with us. Blessed to have you with us. And we're so blessed to have this group of very esteemed panelists who will be sharing with us tonight. Again, this is a production of National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated in conjunction with Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk is our major sponsor tonight, as they have been for each of these webinars that we've done. And we are so grateful and thankful for their support and for the expertise that they have offered along the way. All righty, before we go any further, I want to again acknowledge our convention leadership for the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. Dr. Jerry Young is our president. Our general secretary is Dr. Alvin Edwards. Our chair of the Federal Faith-Based Development Initiative is Dr. Alvin Love. And our national director of the NBC USA liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is none other than Reverend Dr. Michael Minor. So we do acknowledge them. We thank God for their leadership, and we thank them for giving us the opportunity to do this tonight. So again, we want to thank Novo Nordisk. We want to recognize all of our Southwest region state convention presidents or board members who may be with us tonight as a panelist or as an attendee, or even if they're viewing through some other means of social media other than Zoom. We do have a wonderful collaboration with Novo Nordisk, a great partnership, and we're very thankful to Dr. Boise Kimber for assisting us in working out that partnership. We want to talk a little bit about obesity. The title of these is Turn Obesity Around. We're going to turn it around. And I love to say all the time that this is not a 360 turn, but we want to do a 180 so that we're turning around to go in the right direction and not turning all the way back around, repeating the same things that we've done before that may not be beneficial to our health. Let's look at the condition of our country in terms of how obesity really affects us. We've talked about in previous webinars how sometimes in our culture, people of color, we sometimes laugh at it. We sometimes make being obese a bit of a joke, but we know that it is a serious health condition. It's more than just being fluffy. It is more than just being quote unquote fine. There's much more to it. In America, nearly 80 million adults are obese. Sadly, nearly 50% of non-Hispanic Blacks are obese. Folks, that's talking to us, people who are part of our convention. We are predominantly African-American convention, so that's speaking of us. Additionally, diabetes, which oftentimes is a direct result of obesity, affects 34.2 million Americans, or 10.5% of the population. Y'all, that's more than a tithe of the population because it's 10.5%. That's a lot of folks. That's basically more than 1 in 10 Americans. So disproportionately, 11.7% of non-Hispanic Black adults in the United States have diagnosed diabetes. What can we do to turn these numbers around? Our convention, the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, is launching a national education awareness campaign entitled Turn Obesity Around. And the focus of this campaign, the focus of this and all the other webinars we've been doing around this subject is to educate our member congregations and the communities that we serve about the very, very adverse effects of obesity and diabetes on the quality and the quantity of the lives that we live. We want to live a long time. That's a blessing. We know it's wonderful. The Bible teaches us how gray hair is a blessing. It's an honor when we get old. But we don't want to just have the age. We want to have quality along with it. We want that quality of life along with the quantity of years that the Lord may bless us with. So this webinar is a continuation of a series of 7 total webinars that will introduce and define the NBC USA Turn Obesity Around continuum. Yes, we do recognize that obesity is a major problem in our community. I've said that already, a major problem in the African-American or Black community. However, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. A continuum of intervention begins with awareness and with our why. And our panelists tonight are going to help us understand all the whys of obesity. It doesn't start with overeating. It starts normally with something else. And they're going to share those things with us. Then we're going to talk about intervention. Intervention will then involve individual or combinations of behavior modification, pharmacology, that's medicine, and or surgery. And we know that surgery is an option for some individuals, but it should be the last resort after everything else has been exhausted. So in this session, we'll introduce the NBC USA Turn H.O.P.E, Turn Obesity Around continuum a little bit and talk about over the next 45 minutes, you're going to hear from our H.O.P.E team. We are so blessed to have a team of experts, subject matter experts who can really help us understand this very complex issue of obesity. And then we're gonna just have a little bit of a dialogue about it. I want to first begin with Sister Nettie Johnson, who is a member of our H.O.P.E team. And I want to give her an opportunity to share a little bit about the physical fitness aspect of behavior modification. Just to share a little bit about Nettie, I'm going to bring her on screen. You all who've watched me on these webinars before know that spotlighting someone else on the video is my most favorite thing to do. And I know I didn't say that correctly, but I love taking my face off the camera. Hello, Nettie. You look beautiful. Thank you for being
Hello. Thank you as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Nettie is the founder of Faith and Fitness Services, LLC. She's an author, a podcaster, a credentialed health educator, and the founder of Education for Transformation, a wellness organization that develops and delivers curated education and programming addressing African-American health disparities. And y'all are going to hear us say the word disparities a whole lot during this webinar. And that just simply means an area where we are disproportionately negatively affected by something. And in this particular case, it is the effects of diabetes and even the causal factors that lead to diabetes and obesity. Science-based, faith-empowered solutions for healthy weight management is Nettie's area of passion and specialty. She's a Robert Wood Foundation Culture of Health leader, and she holds multiple fitness and health coaching certifications. She's a member of the Society for Public Health Education and Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Can I say that 3 times fast? No. Nettie also serves as a health ambassador trainer and the National Physical Fitness Coordinator for the NBC H.O.P.E Ministry. So Nettie, welcome. So glad to have you tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be here tonight.
I'm happy that you're here. We're going to go ahead and introduce our other panelist, who is also an esteemed member of our HOPE team. This is Dr. Lavora Williams, and she's going to talk a little bit later about obesity and its connection to other prevalent health issues in our community. She's also going to speak to the situations where medication and or surgery may be needed for some individuals, and she'll share with us kind of how our doctors may guide us along that road, because that may not be an option for everyone. She'll help us understand that. So Dr. Williams is an associate professor in the College of Nursing and Graduate Studies. She is a director of the community health. Dr. Williams, I didn't say the school. Say the school for me.
University of Kentucky.
University of Kentucky. So she's an associate professor in the College of Nursing and Graduate Studies at the University of Kentucky. She is the director of community health advocacy interventions, generating equity. And if you take away all the letters off those words, you get the acronym CHANGE, Community Health Advocacy Interventions, Generating Equity Team, and the Assistant Director for Cancer Health Equity at the NCI Designated Markey Cancer Center, otherwise known as the MCC, where she holds the Endowed Research Professorship in Cancer Health Equity. Dr. Williams is chair of the MCC Diversity and Inclusivity Committee and a member of the Cancer Prevention Program. Dr. Williams received her undergraduate degrees in nursing from Union University and the Medical College of Georgia. She earned her master's degree in nursing as a family nurse practitioner from Georgia Southern University and a PhD in nursing with distinction from Georgia Regents University. Her research aims to advance health equity among racial and ethnic minority and medically underserved populations through community engaged research methods to affect improved diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer outcomes. Dr. Williams is a nationally recognized individual recognized for developing culturally adapted interventions for implementation by community health workers in church settings. We put that in layman's terms. She is a researcher who knows how to dig deep, roll her sleeves up, and reach into our community, reach the churches using our language. And she's a part of the church. So she's not a researcher that comes in from somewhere else and takes all our intellectual data, but she's one of us who's trying to help adapt these methods to fit our culture so that we can get the help we need. All right. I hope I did well on your introduction, ladies. We're going to get started. Let's talk a little bit about 2013, what happened. The Office of Minority Health asked us to conduct a pilot called Turn the Beat Around. And the purpose of that pilot was to test the efficacy of using health ambassadors to affect sustained, better individual and communal health. In other words, using health ambassadors to have better outcomes in the health situations of the people in our churches. The study took place in several Alabama cities because we know the health disparities that we speak of so often are prevalent in Alabama. And the result of the study showed that the intervention was indeed effective, and we praise God for that. So the results were published in a peer-reviewed journal. So kudos to our HOPE team who led that effort. So this particular pilot in 2013 started our turnaround efforts. So we followed that success with efforts around the Affordable Care Act or the ACA or Obamacare, whichever name you'd like to use for it. And then by NIH's All of Us research program, which you see spotlighted behind me on the screen. And we're very much still heavily involved with All of Us, which aims to get 1 million people to participate in non-invasive research that is going to help researchers and providers provide better care, better patient-centered care, more provide more precise care for us in the future, particularly our future generations. So Turn Obesity Around will become our fourth funded turnaround effort that looks to continue our success in achieving a turnaround in our community so these outcomes get better. So let's talk a little bit, ladies, about the continuum. Sister Nettie, before you provide us an overview of this information, could you share a little bit about your personal testimony about obesity? And I get chills every time I hear you share it because it is just so very touching.
Thank you very much. And once again, it's always an honor and a privilege to come and to participate in these webinars and talk about something that is very passionate and purposeful for me in the work that I do with African American health disparities. And this passion is actually rooted in a very personal experience. I grew up in a family where pretty much carrying extra weight as well as carrying the burden of many chronic diseases that was normalized in our family. So much so that we didn't really think that anything was, kind of wrong with it. We thought that that was just how we were made. It was how we were built. And we did not necessarily take action to change any of those things. A big wake up call happened for me when I actually did get a phone call at 4. It was a 4 o'clock in the morning phone call. I remember very vividly. December the 13th, 1986. It was the first day of finals. I was 17 years old, and I got a call from my sister that my father died. And he just went to sleep the night before and did not wake up in the morning. And death is always very, very challenging. I mean, it's difficult. Grieving is not easy, but it was so much compounded, I believe, for me and many members of my family, because so many people kept saying, but Daddy wasn't sick. He wasn't sick. He had not been hospitalized. He had not received a diagnosis of cancer. What we wrapped our mind around as having disease in the body was something that we felt really wasn't touching us or anyone in our sphere. But when we really look at it, it was all around us. My father had multiple chronic diseases. He was on multiple medications from hypertension. He had coronary artery disease. He had a number of conditions that we did not take as seriously as we should. And so we had normalized this condition of being less than well. And so it was such a surprise. The thing about it is that we can have knowledge up here. My father did. He was a college educated man. We were a decidedly middle class family. He was an intelligent person, as was all of his brothers and sisters. So we can sometimes have the knowledge here. But something happens when head knowledge becomes heart knowledge. And when it hits us in a place that motivates us to see things through maybe a different lens or a different perspective, and also motivates us to make changes to things that are less than they could be. And that's what I saw begin to happen in my family with my uncles that had similar conditions. They started to make changes in their lifestyle, reduce their weight, eat better, cook better, do things to take care and manage their chronic conditions, bringing the weight down, bringing some of these conditions under control. And just this past Saturday, we had the home going for my dad's youngest uncle, my dad's youngest brother, my uncle, and he lived 35 years beyond what my father did because some of those changes were made. I too also made some changes in my lifestyle. I was an overweight child. Again, earlier on, I didn't think anything of it. But after that wake-up call, I started to make a number of like adjustments, just trying to say, I don't want to go down the same path with the hypertension, diabetes, and all of these conditions that were so prominent on my family tree. I knew I had the disposition. I was diagnosed with a heart condition in my early 20s. And so I started this period of just trying anything to lose weight, back and forth, back and forth. You name the diet, I try it. People were doing it and it was popular. I'm there. I made up my own diets. And the weight would come on and off and on and off and over and off. And over a period of maybe the next 10, possibly 15 years, I gained and lost over between 250 and 300 pounds. I stopped counting after a while because I would lose 50 pounds and then gain 55, lose 40, gain, back and forth. Trying to make myself well, I was actually making myself ill. I had to have my gallbladder removed and was having difficulties in causing illness because I wasn't going about changing my lifestyle in a healthy way. So eventually after 2000, I made a turn of the century decision to try to do it a better way. I joined a commercial weight loss company for the 5th time. It had not worked for me before. At that time, I stuck to the program that they prescribed. I got to a healthy weight. My doctor was pleased with my numbers, and y'all, every single day was a struggle. It was a struggle because I was trying to do what they defined for me to do, trying to follow a prescribed program instead of finding something that fit into my lifestyle, my preferences, that matched my biology, my ecology. It didn't really fit for me. And so I did that for about 10, 12 years, even worked for the company. In that decade that I worked for that company and struggled with my weight, I directed operations for the states of Texas and Oklahoma for this international weight loss company, literally saw thousands of people struggling as well. And it wasn't until around 2012 when I came home, I had some premature children. I felt that it was important for me to be home with them. And I felt without the resources and the structures and literally having to get on the scale as part of my job requirement. It was part of my job requirement to maintain a healthy weight, talk about stress. So I thought without those kinds of requirements and accountabilities, I said, I'm just going to give up. And I clearly heard Holy Spirit just speak to my heart and say, you're struggling, and surrender it. Why don't you let me do the heavy lifting? And when I took it from being just straight a health thing or from being a vanity thing, I'm going to go there. I mean, there were periods where I would do it because of how I would look, or there was some kind of an event coming up, or I wanted to fit in some clothes. When I took it away from what my doctor said I should do, what I felt that I should do, even for medical or whatever reasons, and when I looked at it as a way, some of the behaviors and the changes and the steps that I needed to make, when I looked at it as a way to truly honor God by nourishing and stewarding my body well, when I started to do that, instead of doing drastic things, I was able to find livable steps, changes that related to how I viewed exercise and then would exercise, how I viewed food and then would shop, cook, and eat. When I began to make those changes, I was able to find a fit that was livable and helped me to get to a place where I'm able to reduce so many of those risks in those kind of conditions. And so I went back to school and got a health education degree and got a boatload of certifications. And I support other people with science-based, faith-empowered approaches to not just weight loss, but to weight management, to finding a place where not only where your body is comfortable and you are comfortable, where you're comfortable in the skin that you're in, and you're living at a place that is healthy for you. That path is different for different people because these bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we are all unique. So finding that specific path for each person, it takes a little bit of time. It may take a little bit of energy and effort, but part of what we do is we support individuals in that work. And I am just like slap happy, joyful, exuberant, thankful to God that the National Baptist Convention is doing this term Obesity Around initiative, because this is actually a condition. Obesity is a disease. It is a disease that we don't talk about as much as we need to, even though it is tremendously prevalent in our community, and it has tremendous health consequences. So we have this very difficult situation that in some ways has been normalized. But the good news is, and thank God there's always good news, there is hope and there is help. And those are the things that we're unpacking and exploring in these webinars and upcoming sessions that we'll be having going on.
Wow, what a testimony. I heard you talk about going from a grief situation to going to a situation of hope and passion. And I heard you say excitement. And that was all around the effects of obesity and how it can be overcome, and how you were able to turn it around in your life. What a fabulous, fabulous testimony. I'm so sure that your personal testimony has impacted your development of the work that we do in Hope, or just the things you do. I mean, it's fabulous. I think you have something a little bit deeper that you want to share with us on the screen about the continuum of how we can affect these same type of changes in our life.
Well, actually, I don't have a screen share for the continuum. We're not doing that, and I think in the scope of this webinar today, but we can talk definitely about some of the aspects, some of the health consequences, and the steps that we're taking with the National Baptist Convention.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you like to start with some of the health consequences?
Absolutely. I think that would be fabulous.
Sure, sure. So, Sister Ryder, you opened up with some very, I think, important statistics for us to kind of keep in mind about how prevalent this the condition of obesity, overweight and obesity, are in the nation, and particularly in our community. And it is, I believe, such a tremendous challenge because it is a complex condition. It's a very complex issue. For a long time, we have heard that to reduce your weight, to lose weight, you simply need to eat less and move more. It's this concept connected to an energy balance. And whereas the energy balance is core and it's central in weight loss and weight management, it's not the end all to be all. It's more complex than that. And there are other areas. We have to keep in mind things like our biology or our genetics. Overweight and obesity is extremely tied to our genes and our heredity. It is actually, there's a stronger genetic link that if you have parents that are, have a certain height, the way that passes down, obesity is a stronger link when we go to genetics and our biology than that. So there is that particular factor. When we look past biology, we also have to consider our ecology, our environment, our culture. And I think that that is something that is not addressed enough or as much. How does our culture either support overall health or being at what is a healthy weight for us, or how does it take us away from that? We also have other things like, the amount of sleep that we get, how much rest we have, how we manage stress. Stress releases hormones that can impact not only our hunger, but how our body holds on to excess calories and adipose tissue. So there's hormonal effects there. We did talk a little bit about lack of exercise, unhealthy eating behaviors, our age. There's so many elements that come into this aspect, or this come together and create a condition that make it more difficult for us to lose weight and to keep weight off. So when we're looking at this process of adjusting our body weight to improve our health, we have to take a very holistic approach. But if we're going to start at the very bottom, I think it starts with awareness, knowing where you are, seeing if this is something that can really benefit you with your health, because having extra weight and being overweight or obese has ties to conditions like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, having high LDL and low HDL, type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, stroke, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, problems with our joints and pain with that. It even has connections to a number of types of cancers, including esophageal, liver, kidney, breast, ovarian, colon, endometrial, and all over all causes of death and mortality. So when we look at the challenges that we have, or the consequences that could have, and the challenges, there's a whole lot going on. But where we want to start is with awareness of where we are. And then the next step is to really dig into your why. Now, in just a couple of minutes of talking, I gave you a couple of whys. And yes, I could tick off a number of things that we can talk about with health consequences, but that's just an external, information.
Right.
Where is your why internal?
The inside.
Exactly. Your personal reason. And when we really do tie into that, and for me, it really didn't click. Again, I said it before, it didn't click until I made it a God thing, because even when it hurt my heart, and when I saw it as it impacted my family and all of the pain and the grief and the challenges that happened, I still didn't have the motivation to do things that would stick. I would stop and start and stop and start because it still didn't really sink in. It wasn't until I tied it to our faith. You know, truly apart from God, we can do nothing. With God, with Christ, all things are possible. And when we can apply our faith and see this as a way to steward, a way to worship God, a way to honor God, it can help us, keeping that perspective and that frame, it can help us with whichever step we make it. If the step has to be in nutrition, if the step is in activity, if the step is in other things that maybe your physician is guiding you to as needed. It can be pharmacology, it can be surgical, whatever the aspects are. Those steps, we can make them when we tie it to our faith and have a deep why. And that's a personal exploration that sometimes you can have with others and group sessions and one-on-one coaching sessions. But I certainly do hope that it's a conversation that we have in prayer with God about how we can make it about Him when we make our decisions and we take daily steps to make lifestyle behavior changes and take these particular interventions to address the condition.
Wow. I think you're pointing to the temple. Everything you've said has pointed back to us viewing our bodies as the temple of the Holy Spirit. And sometimes I think we tend to believe that only means that we treat it as a temple when we have a physical manifestation of the Holy Spirit. You know, we're caught up in the spirit, we're caught up in the dance or something like that. But it is a daily walk to make sure that our health is in order, that we're taking care of the temple. I'm reminded of all of the temptations around unhealthy lifestyles that involve sugary desserts, fried foods. There are so many things out there that draw us to those things, even the media. I think in one of our other webinars, you or either Sister Ellen McKnight, who's not one of our panelists tonight, but she is on with us, and she may have to unmute, but I think she mentioned to us how there are certain people that are employed by food manufacturers who they're basically food engineers, and they get paid very high dollar to make those foods, those unhealthy foods, appealing to us. So it just feeds into the whys. If we're having a moment and we're into the emotional eating, those things are readily available to us, and they know how to make them as attractive as possible. So we have to be prepared and be prayed up to address that temptation.
Absolutely, Sister Minor. And that does get to the point too that Sister Nettie was making about our environments. And that speaks to social determinants of health. A lot of times what you're speaking about are those things that are unhealthy for us are more available to communities of color. That the communities of color don't have things that are conducive to adoption of a healthy lifestyle. For instance, no street lights, or no sidewalks, no safe places to walk, not having a grocery store that's easily accessible to us so that we have ready access to those God-made foods that are more healthy for our bodies than fast food restaurants, which are ubiquitous in communities of color.
Absolutely. Even in the rural South, that's an issue. You know, these little tiny communities that only have a sundry.
Yes,
you know, and in that sundry, there's nothing but pizza and cold cuts and beer, and that's all they sell.
Where it takes more effort for us to get those things that are best for us.
And they're right down the road from the church. So we drive right by them or walk right by them when we're going to church or leaving church. I think you were saying something else, Nettie. Go ahead.
I think that, again, I think it's really important that we're having this conversation in the church, because this is such, I think, an important, and it can be so impactful. Just think about the role of women in life in general, and then think about the role of women in the church. Our churches are full of women. We are often the driving force for ministry. And when we are not well, it impacts not only us, but it impacts the service that we can do. It impacts the impact that we can make in our families, in our church families, in our communities, and so on and so forth. You mentioned the Office of Minority Health. They did a study regarding obesity, or pulled data regarding obesity in African Americans. And they found that African American women, we have the highest rates of obesity or being overweight compared to all other ethnic groups, to the point that 4 out of 5 African American women are clinically overweight or obese. Now, a question can come up when you look at that to say, well, whose scales and whose standards are you using? And there's a whole nother conversation that we could have around, what group were those scales based upon? Does this apply to African American women? But I'm going to put a couple of points out, because we talked about awareness, and these are things for us to think about, research, and pray about. It would make sense to the argument that it doesn't apply to us if we had good health outcomes. If African American women, if we had the best health outcomes, or if our health outcomes were at least equal to other people. But remember that list of conditions that I ticked off that have a connection to overweight or obesity, we disproportionately suffer and die from those. I mean, even if you consider like breast cancer, we don't get breast cancer as readily, or the prevalence is not as high, for example, as against compared to Caucasian women, but we die from it. Right. So if this is tearing us up, and we have this is something for us to take a look at. But what tends to happen is that I believe when a people have been denied something for so long, and we have been denied things like Dr. Williams was talking about with the social determinants of health, when we have been denied access to everything from information to resources, when people have been denied something for so long, I believe that we begin to make the abnormal normal. We normalize a condition of comfortability where we are as part of a survival kind of thing. We get comfortable where we are. And I want to bring that to a call for us to take a look at this and to address some of the cultural, external as well as internal. As it relates to the social determinants of health, when they break down and they look at it as it relates to obesity, studies have found that poverty is only relevant as it relates to obesity in African American and Hispanic men. It doesn't apply for African, when they look at the social determinants of health. And now we can even look at this in our churches and in our communities. I can look at it in our families. We can have individuals that live in areas where we have access to these resources, but we don't choose to. Because so much of our culture, we have built a culture around things that are unhealthy for us. And I dare say, I want to kind of go, we're going to talk about physical activity, Sister Maida, if you want to take us there. But I think in this particular webinar, Holy Spirit was leading me to really kind of dig into this cultural aspect. Y'all, we have glorified and built traditions around things that are so not healthy for us. We honor them, we protect them. If somebody comes and says something different to it, we gonna fight against it. We have haloed things or hallowed things that are not healthy, and we call it tradition.
Yes.
There is a way, and some of the things that we do a lot in health ministries, and for those of you that are health ambassadors, God bless you. Thank you for the work that you do. And a lot of work that we do, I do particularly in health ministries, I look at as it relates to some of these things, how can we take these traditions and honor the traditions, but adjust them so that we honor the tradition, but we also honor this body and this temple. So if we look at some of the foods that we eat, we can still have them, but will we have them in moderation?
Absolutely.
Instead of having it for 3 meals or 2 meals a day. Because think about it, some of this stuff we eat is like, can we take it to a biblical model and look at how they use food for celebration? And when they looked at access, when they looked at extremely rich foods, it was for celebration. And when it got too far, it was actually called gluttony. Can we do that? Because we call gluttony a good time. Tell the truth. We can go someplace and say, we got together. We can say, oh, I ate so much. I had to unbuckle, and we call that a good time. I believe that the battle is not against flesh and blood, it's a principalities and powers. And that's why I say this is a spiritual thing, and it is coming in a number of different ways, external forces. But we also need to look at where we have internalized behaviors, not just internalized them, but where we have hallowed behaviors that are keeping us at a place where we are less than our God-given potential as it relates to our health, our wellness, our activity, how we feel, all of those kinds of aspects. And so when we start to examine these things, we're not saying change everything. We're saying to not look at it from our eyes or the flesh's eyes, look at them from some spiritual eyes. Let's ask for, God to shine some light on these things, and then just pick individual small changes that we can make that will be impactful. And again, for different people, those changes will be different.
Excellent. So true. Individual changes. Dr. Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Williams. We've talked about a lot of different interventions. We've talked about finding the why. And Sister Nettie, thank you. God bless you for sharing such a wealth of information. And every time you mention the things that we have haloed, I think of the fellowship dinners at church with those big boxes of chicken. I mean, we go to the Kroger or wherever and we order 300 pieces of chicken, and we're excited. We walk out with our big box, so yeah, you're right. We have made those things too much a part of our culture. But I know there's steps. Sometimes it takes a little bit more than exercise for some individuals. I know there's a little bit more to it, even after we find out the why. So Dr. Williams, talk to us a little bit about some other interventions for people who aren't as successful with behavior modification, who aren't as good at knowing when to step away or knowing when to realize that it's gluttony.
Yes, absolutely. We're trying to learn more about what else it takes for individuals who may be participating in a program such as Sister Nettie was speaking about, any group-based intervention. So trying to understand at the individual level what drives a certain individual to help them overcome any barriers they may have to lifestyle modification. Once those things are identified and a person has gone through behavior interventions, there are other options for them. Surgery is one, and medications is one also. Because sometimes people need additional help beyond changing their behaviors, changing their nutrition, changing their physical activity. Although those things undergird every other intervention, we still want people to have a healthy diet. We want people to be physically active, but they still, despite making those changes, still may need surgery as well as medications. Absolutely. And then there might be a question regarding when is that discussion? When is the time to have that discussion? And it varies. Generally speaking, for an individual who has a BMI, here comes that word again, greater than 30, but oftentimes, many times a person might have a lower BMI, but they also have another weight-related condition, such as diabetes that Sister Nettie spoke about, or heart disease, or if they have very high hypertension. So there are some other conditions that makes the conversation about when to have surgery occur at an earlier time than it would for others.
Talk a little bit about medication management. I think we have a question in the chat. Someone asked about handling medically induced diabetes, which is a concept that I'm not familiar with. Can you address that?
Handling medically induced diabetes.
Yes, ma'am.
So a person, if that individual is questioning where they have taken medications that for some reason cause them to have hyperglycemia.
I would think that's what they mean. There's no specifics in the question, but I would think that's what comes to my mind.
So a lot of times the medications that cause an elevated blood sugar, generally we think of steroids, where a person is having to take steroids. Those medications that might induce high blood sugar are used because they are absolutely necessary. So there's always a risk and a benefit ratio with introducing new medications to an individual. So if that is a complication from a medication, then the healthcare provider has to weigh the risk of withdrawing that steroid, because it's probably used for something very serious where they are hesitant to withdraw it because it might make their underlying condition worse. Maybe when we unmute, we can get more deeper into what that question was.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
But back to patients. So very similar to surgery, the introductions of medications is based on the person's BMI and their other weight-related medical conditions. For instance, a person might have a lower BMI, let's say a BMI of 28, but they also have diabetes or hypertension or high cholesterol. So the provider might make a recommendation to introduce medications. On the other hand, a person might have a BMI of 28, but they're otherwise healthy. Perhaps they haven't done 6 months of behavior interventions of trying to get them more nutritionally sound, more physically active. So the healthcare provider may make a recommendation for them to continue lifestyle modification a little bit longer before they introduce medications. There's been some great strides being made with the development of weight loss medications, because for a while we only had one on the market. Now there's actually about 3 medications recommended for weight loss. And even recently, early June, our sponsors, Novo Nordisk, had received FDA approval for a weight loss medication that was originally used to treat diabetes. And even now there's a medication that has been approved for children as young as 12 years old. So we're making some strides in treating obesity as a chronic disease, such as Sister Nettie was discussing, that it's not something that we can just take a person through or prescribe something, they're cured, and we never have to revisit it. It's something that we have to manage chronically, just like we manage diabetes, just like we manage high blood pressure.
So let's talk a little bit. I think Sister Nettie touched on it, and you mentioned it a little bit about the numbers. You talked about BMI. We know that being healthy or living in optimal health is not a one-size-fits-all process.
True.
What may be healthy for one person may not be as healthy for the other one. Exactly. So let's talk about the numbers. I know recently I've heard a lot of chatter about people who are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, people of color who are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and it seems like this must be the year of pre-diabetes because almost everybody is getting that particular diagnosis. So let's talk about where the numbers should be. I've heard it said that perhaps genetically the numbers for the A1C numbers for a person of color may not be the same as those for non-Blacks. So can you talk a little bit about that?
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because actually that's what my dissertation was on.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So around the time that I completed my PhD, the American Diabetes Association had made the recommendation to use A1C for diabetes diagnosis and for pre-diabetes diagnosis. Prior to that, we had only used A1C for diabetes management. So we would say your diabetes is managed, well controlled, if your A1C is less than 7. So then the American Diabetes said, well, okay, for pre-diabetes, then an A1C between 5.7 and 6.5. It's an individual who's pre-diabetic. But my research was based on what we learned that for some reason, African Americans oftentimes will have a higher A1C, but they don't have clinical changes of prediabetes. For a long time, we thought that a person had to have diabetes before it affected their nerves, before it affected their vision, before it affected the arteries of their heart. But we are learning that people with prediabetes, that those changes are already occurring. But what was interesting is that among African Americans, we couldn't clearly say that they were having those changes with the ADA recommendation of prediabetes of 5.7 to 6.5. So for whatever reason, African Americans oftentimes will have a higher A1C, but not have any clinical signs of prediabetes, that we just run a higher A1C.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Now that opens a whole lot of questions in my mind.
It
I won't
does
say on Zoom.
indeed.
I won't
It
even,
does
I won't
indeed.
even voice the question, but very interesting.
Because, you know, when I was in full-time clinical practice, patients would come in and their A1C would be high, but they would say, no, my home readings are 100, 110. And I could never reconcile that in my brain until the dissertation work. They were telling the truth.
Okay. I'm not gonna say what I was thinking. But
I mean, I think
it just goes to show that this is bigger than just pushing back from the table. There's a whole lot more in terms of the why. There's a whole lot more in terms of different interventions that work for different people based on where they are in their life. But what I'm hearing both of you say is that obesity does not have to be a death sentence for people, that there are many, many ways that they can get the weight off and keep it off. I'm going to ask this one last question. In light of everything we've talked about tonight, why is it that so many people who suffer from obesity have such a such a hard time losing and keeping the weight off, even after they know their whys and they know their numbers and all of that?
Yes.
Dr. Williams, anything?
Sister Minor, behavior change in itself, it's hard. It's hard for us to change any behavior that we're trying to change. And when we live in an environment such as what Sister Nettie was alluding to, that doesn't support it. We live in this obesogenic environment. Everywhere we go, our serving sizes are much larger than what we need. Everything is upsized. When we check out at the grocery store, those things that are good for our body, that's not what's handy at the register. That's where your candy bars are, your little bags of chips and those things that are sugary, your sugar sweetened beverages. So it's really hard. And that's why obesity is a chronic condition that we just have to keep working at it. You know, we start with these group interventions that are cheaper, easier to deliver. We're able to reach more people, but then we have to get to the individual level to find out what that individual needs, looking at their genetics, looking at their environment, and looking at what drives them towards a healthy lifestyle, and not focusing so much on what the scale says, because helping a person live a healthy lifestyle. You have anything to add to that, Sister Nettie?
I think you're hitting on it. And I think that we need to have these conversations, Brooks, these conversations with our medical health professionals. If our doctors are not having these conversations with us, we need to start to have the conversation with them. because it is so multifaceted and so complex,
Yes.
and there are so many elements that are involved. Please don't try to do this thing alone, right? And when we are given a a direction or a path, then we have to advocate for ourselves or bring in other people to help advocate as well, to make sure that we're not just being given some kind of a prescription. I want to tie it back to what Dr. Williams was saying earlier about how her whole dissertation was around a prescribed A1C, a protocol and a guideline that did not fit an entire demographic of people, meaning us, right? So here again, you have to find your fit. Find your fit, and then rely on the resources and the supports that we have so that we can be consistent in it. That's my little, how, in the church, we love to rhyme. That's my thing all the time. Like, find your fit and be consistent in it. And I think that it starts with a conversation with your doctor to see where we are. It is not something we have to stop normalizing unhealth. We have to get rid of any aspects of shame, of any aspects of all of these negative connotations. We need to put all of this aside. There's this condition as a disease that we can do things to make better. We can do things to make better. So it's starting off with information, finding steps, and allowing yourself to take small, consistent steps forward. Success breeds success. It builds your confidence, and to, just begin that path, and also, really plug into the resources and the support. Coming back to some of the group intervention things with the National Baptist Convention, we do have a program called Let's Move National Baptist that is encouraging members in our churches all across the nation to engage in activity. We're not throwing out some plan like a challenge, like everybody do so many steps, because that may not be a fit for everyone, right? But we are encouraging people to move, made our bodies to move, and to work our way to the guidelines, the federally recommended guidelines of 150 minutes per week. That's 2.5 hours per week, but we can get better benefits if we can do 300. We're working towards that and trying to support people in moving, as well as things to help us with our eating. Through the Health Ambassador program, we're looking at how can our churches be that hub of nutrition information, education, and modeling. What do we serve? What are the kinds of foods that the Culinary Committee is putting out? How can we show people how more healthier foods can still taste good, and use it also as an education hub, as well as a place for a center to bring in some of these more healthy foods that may not necessarily be as readily available. So there's so many different aspects of ways that we can do it collectively and individually. But I say again, talk with your doctor, have a talk with God, and just see where you are, and then take a step. We have the resources that we need. They're out there. We just have to connect to them, hold on to them, and take those steps.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So we've learned tonight from both of you ladies that we just need to change our conversation about obesity, change our view of obesity, and look at all the options that are out there for us to help us turn obesity around. So thank you both. You both were just great. As you can see, I changed my background screen, and I want everybody to ignore the little box in the middle that says Southeast Region, Thursday, May 20th, because we know that May 20th was a couple of weeks ago, several weeks ago, actually. But what I do want you to focus on instead of that is the rest of the screen. Again, we want to acknowledge our Hope Health Ministry, which is a ministry of the National Baptist Convention USA Incorporated. And this is one of our many regional Turn Obesity Around webinars. But I want you to look at, what's behind me. The Novo Nordisk logo. We want to again acknowledge Novo Nordisk as one of our major, as our major sponsors, not one of our major sponsors, but our major sponsor this evening. We also want to acknowledge our convention and our convention leadership, Dr. Jerry Young and his team for supporting us in this. And please remember this traffic sign that we have where the arrow is making a turn and the person is turning around. That's telling the vehicle, telling the body, telling the temple to turn around, to change the practices, to live healthier, to really turn obesity around in our communities. That is so important. And we want to thank not only our panelists, Sister Nettie and Dr. Lavora, but we want to thank our entire HOPE team for being so wonderful and assisting us in making all of these webinars happen. I think Sister Nettie, where are you? There you are. I want to put you back on camera again so that our viewing audience can see you ladies. We just commend you both for your efforts and for being so kind to us. We certainly want to acknowledge the other members of our HOPE team. Those of you who are viewing us on Zoom can probably see the chat. Sister Linda Carper and Sister Ella McKnight are both posting in our chat. Sister Carper has taken us to the word, which I think is the key to us overcoming obesity. She's quoted here Psalms 139:14 from the English Standard Version. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Y'all, that's talking about us. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. I think that's a great scripture for us to focus on as we look at all the interventions that the Lord has placed in our path for those of us who suffer from the disease of obesity. We again want to acknowledge our HOPE team. Dr. Michael Miner is the leader of our team. We want to acknowledge Pastor Bernard Montgomery, Sister Felicia Washington, of course, Dr. Williams, who did such a fabulous job tonight for us, Sister Johnson, who did a great job as well, Sister Ellen McKnight, who has been with us on several of these webinars, Sister Linda Carper, Dr. Desi Levy, Minister Geraldine Moore, Sister Bettina Campbell, Pastor Dexter Moraney, and Sister Loretta Miller. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our HOPE team. We appreciate everything that they do for us. Please visit our HOPE website. Visit talking about social determinants of health, https://health.gov/healthy people, and go to the tab that talks about social determinants of health. I think you'll see a lot of background information that relates directly to what these two ladies have shared with us tonight. Again, we want to acknowledge and thank Nova Nordics for their sponsorship, for being a major sponsor, and we certainly want to acknowledge our convention leadership, Dr. Young, our president, Dr. Edwards, our general secretary, Dr. Love, our chair of the Federal Faith-Based Development Initiative, and of course, Dr. Miner, my other half, who is the national director, NBC USA liaison to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we now know what we need to know to turn obesity around. We want better health outcomes. We want quality and quantity of life. We do not want to be the leaders of health disparities anymore. I think we can do better. When we know better, we are to do better. Dr. Williams, Sister Johnson, God bless you. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We are looking forward to learning more and more from you all. A couple of announcements. We want to talk about our upcoming events on September 2nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central. We'll do this all over again, but we'll do it for the West region. It will be another roundtable discussion on obesity in the Black community, focusing on the problem and the remedies. And we'll talk a little bit about National Childhood Obesity Month. I think both of you referenced how this starts very early in life, based on environment and genetics and culture and all that. Remember that our National Baptist Congress is June 21st through June 25th. It will be virtual. Part of that Congress will be the NBC USA HOPE Health Ambassador Training, Monday, June 21st through Thursday the 24th. Those health ambassador trainings will be 10 until noon. And I believe that is Central Time, 10 to noon Central Time. We do have the link and we will share it with those individuals who are interested in getting it. You can mention it to us in the chat, or you can contact us via the H.O.P.E webpage. Via the H.O.P.E email, info@hopenbc.com, to let us know if you're interested in enrolling. We also want to remind everyone of our NIH All of Us research program, which we are participant in. I did have it on the screen a moment ago, but we know that NIH has been working with NBC USA for a number of years with the All of Us research program to help, again, have better health outcomes, looking at every individual, precision medicine, and hopefully working towards a healthier future for all of us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to close out our social media, our Facebook and our YouTube. We're going to close that out in a second. For those who are viewing us via those means, we do thank you. God bless you for sharing your evening with us. We're going to stay on Zoom, so individuals on Zoom who may have questions or comment can pose those questions and comments directly to our panelists. Again, God bless you. God keep you is our prayer.